Okay, let's unpack this. You brought us some pretty interesting material today. It's from the Common Sense Leadership Fund.
That's right. And it outlines what they see as a significant legislative clash happening right now.
Right, involving President Trump's proposed Genius Act.
Exactly. The Guiding and Establishing National Innovation for U.S. Stablecoins bill. The source we're looking at claims there's a deliberate push to undermine it.
And they're pointing the finger at the Credit Card Competition Act, the CCCA, saying it's being used as a kind of, what do they call it?
A legislative poison pill. That's the term they use.
Okay, so our goal here is to dig into why this source believes that's happening.
Yeah, and what they argue the fallout could be, for things like innovation, getting credit, and just general economic freedom. We're really just exploring their take on it.
Got it. So first off, what's the source's main issue with the CCCA itself? Why do they dislike that bill specifically?
Well, this material argues that the CCCA, which Senator Dick Durbin is behind, isn't really about competition, despite the name. They argue it's actually about giving the Federal Reserve more control over how credit card transactions are routed, more centralization, essentially.
Hmm. And how does that routing change, forcing cards onto different networks, impact things according to them?
Their main points are that it would likely kill off credit card rewards programs, the points and miles people like.
Ah, okay. A big impact for consumers there.
Definitely. And they also worry it could weaken cybersecurity for payments and maybe counterintuitively end up costing consumers more.
More, not less.
That's their claim. They compare it directly to the Durbin Amendment for debit cards back in 2011.
Right, I remember that.
They say that didn't save consumers money either. It just killed debit rewards and mostly helped big box stores, hurting smaller banks and consumers. They see CCCA doing the same, but for credit cards.
Okay, so that's their view on the CCCA on its own. But then there's this specific claim about how it's being used now.
Yes, this is central to their argument. They allege the CCCA isn't just being debated on its own merits.
It's being attached to the Genius Act.
Precisely, as an amendment. But, according to this source, it's an unrelated amendment tacked on specifically to sabotage the stablecoin bill.
A poison pill or Trojan horse, like you said.
Exactly. Their perspective is that the goal isn't to improve the Genius Act, but to either water it down so much it's useless or just kill it completely by adding this controversial piece.
And the source connects this whole maneuver to a bigger picture.
Mm.
Something about controlling innovation.
Yeah, that's definitely how they frame it politically. They argue some forces see innovation, especially in finance, as power shifting away from central control.
So things like crypto, stablecoins,
Wow.
decentralized finance.
Right. The source basically says these forces don't want a future where, quote, American families and entrepreneurs have more autonomy.
And they see giving the Fed more power via the CCCA as a way to block that kind of decentralized innovation, the kind the Genius Act is supposed to encourage.
That's the connection they make, yes. Hindering the Genius Act via the CCCA is, in their view, a way to maintain centralized control over finance.
Now, they don't just make these claims, right? They also mention some economic studies.
They do. They cite work from Oxford Economics suggesting the CCCA could cost something like 156,000 jobs and hit the economy for over $200 billion.
Well, okay. Any others?
They also mention a University of Miami analysis that apparently suggests it would hurt credit unions and make it harder for lower and middle income families to get credit.
So putting it all together, the Common Sense Leadership Fund sees this as a pretty critical fight.
Absolutely. They frame it as vital for conservatives, small businesses, anyone who values economic freedom, really. They urge people to sound the alarm.
Which brings us to you, the listener.
Yeah.
The source clearly thinks understanding this alleged tactic is important.
Yeah, and they want people to do more than just understand.
Right, they actually encourage action. So if you want to read their full arguments, see the details for yourself, and find out how they suggest you can get involved or voice concerns.
They've provided resources.
Exactly. There's a link right there in the description for this deep dive. You can check out their full article and their suggestions based on that link.
It's certainly a specific viewpoint on how legislation and financial regulation can intersect, sometimes in unexpected ways.
It really is. And it leaves us with a question drawn straight from this source's perspective. When you see amendments attached to bills, especially popular ones, is it always just normal legislative business?
Or, as the source claims, can it sometimes be a deliberate strategy, a way to specifically block progress on something else, like innovation, something to think about?